Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium's fourth in a series of webinars on building a resilient enterprise, mastering supply chain maturity and risk management, and moving from stage 3, which is called the defined, repeatable, stable operation stage, to stage 4, where you get to data decision making, or other words, a stable state. We appreciate you taking the time today to attend today's webinar on building an evolving resilient enterprise by providing new insights into making key decisions at the executive and tactical levels. Moreover, we hope that your family are healthy and safe. So this is the fourth webinar in the series, but first we had a webinar back in November, which is on the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium website, Identifying the Wall. Then webinar 2 was moving from stage 1 to stage 2 back in January. In February, we went from stage 2 to 3. And today we moved from stage 3 to 4. And then next month, we'll get into stage 4 to 5, and then we'll wrap up the series by looking at the overall ecosystem and driving overall improvements. Again, welcome to this webinar series. Please enter any question you have in the chat at any time. My name is Jim Vries. I am founder of Enhance International Group. And with us, we have Greg Schlegel, who is the founder, managing partner of the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. And we'll do introductions in just a few minutes here about our companies. With that, I just want to cover the deliverables today. We'll give you insights to build a resilient enterprise from stage 3, the defined repeatable operations stage, as defined by Gartner. Then we'll get into overcoming the barriers to increase operational stability. And then we'll give you a roadmap to stability. And then we'll give you a success story on how to move from stage 3 to stage 4, a company that we have supported in that move. And then we'll get into the financial payoff of increasing maturity. So with that, we kick it off with Greg. A little background, Greg?
You bet. Pleasure to be here with you today to talk about our passion, which is building resilient enterprises. This is basically who we are and what we do at the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. We are 33 companies, about 1,700 supply chain risk professionals around the globe. We operate in 23 countries at the moment. And as you see on the right-hand side of the slide, we pretty much have 3 pillars in terms of service and products. In the middle of the slide, we focus on education. That's how we grew up. We grew up out of MBA classes here in the States. We have a lot of education partners, and we'll talk about what we have in a minute. In the middle pillar is consulting. We do a lot of consulting on supply chain risk and resiliency. We more or less lead, guide, direct, and coach companies on their journey. And then on the far right side of the slide, we have software companies, cloud-based organizations who essentially have software to do the heavy lifting that support our vision of our book in terms of what supply chain risk and resiliency is and how to exercise it globally. So pretty good capabilities there within our pillars. On the left-hand side, we have 5 product areas. We have 2 online certificate courses, self-paced. You end up with a certificate. One is based on for manufacturers, and the other is fairly new. It's about service and logistics and a focus on public healthcare NGOs. We do a lot of work with NGOs across the water. We do journey coaching and consulting, as I mentioned. We have a host of platform solutions to improve your visibility, map your supply chain, optimize, and so forth. And then we have 2 online assessments. One is supply chain management readiness assessment that evaluates your supply chain process maturity. It's a best in class and industry benchmark tool. We'll talk a little bit about that today. The other new online assessment is Pure Risk. That's what we call supply chain risk and resiliency, 90-day action plan. It goes through questions of discovery online and depicts where you are in your risk maturity, how your company views risk from a risk appetite, and what your risk and operating culture is. And once the algorithms know that, then they give you an action plan based on where you are, who you are, and how you operate. And that's all run by AI ML algorithms. So that's our products and services, and I'll turn it back to you, Jim.
Great, thanks, Greg. So just a little bit about Enhance International Group. We're a group of about 70 partners covering people, process, data, technology. We have consultants, consulting companies, SaaS providers that make up our team. We cover everything from strategy through execution and focus on how to link strategy to execution with our services. We provide package solution services to enhance your company's performance. In this, you can see today we're focused on linking supply chain practices to drive sustained growth. We have, as we mentioned, SaaS solutions to help you identify and provide visibility to your execution, but we also provide that strategic vision of how do you lay this whole thing out with your company. All of our solutions have guaranteed return on investments of 3 to 12 months, depending on the size and the scope of the job. And you can look at us, we're like the Swiss Army knife of solutions for your company. With that, let's get started with the webinar. For today's agenda, we're going to focus on, again, moving from stage 3 to stage 4. You can look at stage 3 from a Gartner perspective as really having your ecosystem of your company stable, and moving to stage 4, where you're able then to use data-based decision-making to enhance your performance, to get you to that next level, to help you clear the stage 3 wall. So that's what we're going to be focusing first, is understanding the Gartner 5-stage model and how to build that foundation for success. Next, we'll get into the 3 dimensions of stable growth in the trust model of moving from stage 3 to 4. And then we'll get into aligning the tiers 2 and 3 of our supply chain management readiness assessment to drive that stable business growth. And then we'll get into a real world case study in the chemical industry of being able to drive improvements by using the supply chain management readiness tool and some supply chain risk and resiliency tools. And then we'll get into the profit pathway, turning the supply chain maturity into a revenue engine. So everybody says, is it worth the squeeze of making improvements? That's always been the dilemma for companies. How much money do we put into our processes to make them more mature, and what's the return on investment? And we'll give you some helpful hints to get there. With that, we'll get into the resilient demand-driven maturity model brought out by Gartner in the 1990s, which is still relevant today. On the x-axis, you can see we have cost and service. On the left side, we have cost and service. So, and then on the y-axis, we have an inside-out view, which is you're looking internally at your company and how it's running. And then outside in is where you're looking at your suppliers and your customers inside your company. And so the challenge has always been, when you're immature, everybody, it's mano mano kind of type of environment where all the business units, everybody's just going out and just trying to get stuff done. Revenue is king. You produce revenue at all cost. That's stage one. Business units are fragmented and you're not really working together as a team. Stage two is you say, oh, we're going to build these business units into different silos purposely and organize them, start getting into functions, all good stuff. And then stage three is where you say, oh, we have a company behind us. Let's try to build an ecosystem of supply, demand, and an integrated supply chain overall across all of our business units. And then stage four is once you've accomplished that, which is no easy task, is you're getting into building an ecosystem and including the customer in your ecosystem. Because we want to, stage 1 through 2, especially, you want to hide what you're really doing behind the doors with your customer. Stage 3 is you realize you have a customer, but you're not really there. Stage 4 is you put the customer front and center, and it's a pillar of your organization as far as how you set your pace and what you're doing. And then stage 5 is how you're able to build that network ecosystem for your whole entire your customers, your suppliers, and you're really looking at upstream and downstream in your ecosystem. So as that's the overall system. So now, what's the outcome of stage 1? Again, it's revenue focus. It's not scalable. It's adaptable, but to make it adaptable, it would be very expensive because you have fragmented processes. Between stage 2 and 3, the outcome is it's standardized, but you often force fit things, and when you force fit things, you destroy parts of your business. And anybody who's gone from stage 2 to 3, you notice that you lose customers, you lose people, you lose standardization of processes, but you say, we got to get it to work. And in this stage, it's locally scalable, but it's not adaptable across an ecosystem. So when you get to stage 3, again, this is the wall. You get across that, and now you're realizing that you are able to create a stable ecosystem, and now it's such that you're able to optimize your ecosystem versus just optimize a single business unit. And then the exemplars, which is only just a few companies out there, very few, maybe 5 to 8% in an industry sector, are the ones that are scalable, value-centric outcomes, margin to serve, and I'd say margin to serve growth. So they are able to grow both margin and top-line revenue together to edge out the competition. So that is the 5-stage model. And what we're focusing again on today is moving from stage 3, this defined repeatable operations, which is that transition to a standardized repeatable process where everybody knows their job. You have best practices, SOPs are real, they're working, they're not on the shelf and just sitting there. They're actually, people are using them and people are passionate about them. They're updated when new products come out automatically. You're in that kind of a business. Capabilities, again, are predictable, and there's a focus on establishing best practices. Like one of the best practices that we did over the years is each first level manager was responsible for building a best practice or an SOP every quarter or every 6 months. So they're constantly being reviewed and updated, and they are responsible for training everybody in that. And they become an expert in that particular area. So when you have that environment, you're at stage 3. Some of the remediation areas, the challenge is scaling. Again, because you have different silos, different parts of your business. Again, you're moving from a silo to an centralized ecosystem. The key barrier is people don't want to change, right? They don't want to adopt that standardized method. And then the focus here is investing in tools and technology to support that. So what's the technology and tools that can help the people do their job and enable them to have a better day every day? The output of that is the financial outcome is you have those end-to-end standards, you have that interoperability across to you gain efficiencies, and the enterprise is scalable, but not real high growth, but pretty decent growth. And sometimes what happens is management says, oh, we're not growing as fast as we did when we moved from stage 1 to stage 2. Your growth slows down because you're consolidating, and therefore management or the board gets a little frustrated, and they don't want to wait to allow this to stabilize. So that's stage 3. So stage 4 is now it aligns with leveraging the analytics and the measurable insights to drive that consistent improvements across your enterprise. And again, the question here is you're actually using data to help you make decisions, and data is very visible. There's governance, there's accountability, there's roles and responsibilities. They actually mean something. They're not just things that are sitting on the wall. The challenge here is ensure that data accuracy in using insights and proactive decision making. And in this, very often companies are now ready for enterprise information management, building data stores, and trusting the data that's in the system. So that's a key element of stage 4. You're going to have to build that. You might have played around with it in the other stages of Gartner, but here, this is very important that you build that infrastructure with your IT organization. And the key barrier is integration of advanced analytics and operational workflows. So moving from a laggard to a leading indicator data is a key change in the mindset, because most data that we have is lagging indicators. And then the focus areas is, again, leveraging those predictive analytics to optimize those decision making. And again, the output here is scalable, value-centric outcomes. Now you're linking things up and down your supply chain, and you're linking that value proposition all the way from your suppliers all the way to your customer through your facility. So that is the key area there. Is there a question in the chat?
I do not see any.
Okay, so with that, we are coming into the, if you would enter in the chat what stage where you're at. We'll come back to this question in a few minutes, but in the past couple webinars, most people were in stage 2, 3 area. So I'll open it up to Greg. Any comments or questions from your perspective that you would want to address, Greg?
We have a chat entry of stage 3.
Great.
So thank you very much for that. Yeah, we tend to use pole EV, but pole EV tends to be pretty pretty
Where we're having some problems with Pole EV right
yeah,
now.
suspect. Yeah, you
Yeah.
never know. So appreciate it.
So just enter it in the chat if you can't use Pole EV. We're not finding it working for this particular question, unfortunately. But you know, there's no right or wrong where you're at stage. Well, we'll come back to this question to see where you're at. Stage 2. Yeah, there's nothing to be ashamed
Yep,
about
that's
it.
good. Thank you.
There's no right or wrong. That's one of Greg's favorite phrases. There's no right or wrong.
That's true.
And
That's
it's
true.
just where you are. The wrong answer is saying you're somewhere where you're not. Because everybody has to be on the same page in order to say, where are you at today and how are you going to improve tomorrow? So very often that's a whole discussion in itself. But usually it helps to go out for dinner and just loosen up a bit to get real. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Yep, you bet. Thanks, Jim. Get you grounded on the 5-stage Gartner, which is part and parcel to our discussion over the series of 6 webinars. Our next section is what we call the 3 dimensions of stable growth. So we want to share with you some new and exciting data elements associated with what we call the 3 dimensions of stable growth. The first of 3 dimensions is our supply chain management assessment tool. This is the genesis of this tool. It's been around for a while. The tool was born out of a first of a kind MBA supply chain risk management course way back when, I think in 2010, 2011 at Lehigh University. It was so well received that we actually took it on the road and started to leverage it when we built out the consortium. The tool's been operating ever since. It's gone through several transformations. At the moment now, well, we utilize it in all our classrooms, our workshops, webinars like this, and client engagements. We have many versions. There are versions for classroom, workshop, and clients. So it's come a long way. We've now upgraded the tool. It's within a learning management system platform. And let's take a look at the outcome of the tool. The tool it's online, real time. You can get in, you can leave it, you can come back, you can go in as many times as you'd like. But what you get is an outcome on the left-hand side, and that's the chart. Kind of a Likert type chart, has 13 tenets. It has 92 online questions, takes about 25, 30 minutes if you're diligent. And we break up the 13 tenets, as you can see, into blue, which are strategic in our point of view, red, which are tactical, and then green on the left side of the chart, which we call operational. And so what does it measure? It measures two things. It measures your supply chain process maturity in each one of those tenets and the inherent risk inside that tenet. How does it do that? Well, the closer you are to the center of the chart, the more mature that process is and the less inherent risk. Vice versa, the farther away you are, the less mature that process might be and the higher the risk. All right. What do you see? You see the black line. The black line is indicative of your answers associated with each tenet. So what do you get? You get a picture image of your as is state of affairs relative to supply chain best in class processes. We've taken 45 years in the supply chain arena and placed that intellectual property inside those questions. All right. And the beauty of this, folks, is on the bottom right, it's free. I think we have the URL up at the top. You can click on it. If that doesn't work, you can always just go to the website and toggle in and leverage the assessment tool. We like it because it's a good risk supply chain dialogue starter. Second, our second phase of the three dimensions of resilient enterprises is what we call our 21st century supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model. All right, I'll give you a quick thumbnail sketch. On the y-axis on the left is supply chain risk and resiliency maturity from low to high. On the x-axis, it's time, but we also call it competitive advantage from 0 to infinity. Let's take a look at the 5 stages. Everyone's got a model. We have one as well for supply chain risk and resiliency. Our book, our classroom, our body of knowledge is all geared around those 5 stages. First stage on the bottom left is foundational. That encompasses education and awareness. Appreciate you being with us. You're getting a bit of awareness of who's on first and what's on second. You got to start somewhere, foundation. Second stage is visibility. What do we mean by that? Getting better visibility in your supply chain upstream to your suppliers and downstream to your customers. Don't forget your customers. Third stage, predictability. Not necessarily exactly what you might be thinking. This has to do with digitizing your supply chain. We're big advocates of digitization. Why? For one big reason, digitize your supply chain to run what if scenarios. What if I lose supplier A? What does it do to my top line, bottom line, and what kind of risk does it pose? That's what we mean. Digitize supply chain, run what if scenarios. Based on those scenarios, build out mitigation plans if those scenarios ever occur. You're better prepared and you'll be more responsive. Fourth stage, resiliency. What does that mean? That means taking all the tools, techniques, methodologies, solutions that you learn about in your certificate and start to embed them in your daily transactions and daily supply chain life. Last, fifth stage, sustainability. Yes, a box is green, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the 3 Ps. We're talking about once you have small, medium wins, how can you take that from that small win and expand it either to your division and or your enterprise? So that's kind of the 5 stages. We have a mantra on the top. Our mantra is always identify the risk, assess the risk, mitigate, and manage the risk. On the bottom of the chart, you can see that we superimpose a heat map along the 5 stages. So when you're in foundation and visibility, we think you probably have high inherent risk. As you move up the maturity model, you can mitigate those risks. So our question to everyone all the time is, where are you on the 5 stage maturity model? Next, our third dimension is what we call balance scorecard. All right, it's kind of a dashboard. We like it. We like the balance scorecard, whether you're familiar with it or not. It's got 4 major question areas: financial questions, customer questions, internal business process questions, and growth and learning. We like it. We advocate it. The first and second boxes are financial perspective. How do we as an organization look to our stakeholders and shareholders? The second question is, how do we look to our customers and what are our customer expectations? The third and fourth boxes are essentially internal business perspective questions. What must we excel at to do well, all right, in terms of processes? And then finally, on the bottom, the fourth question is growth and learning. Can we continue to improve and create value? And it all revolves around employees and skill sets, motivation, your folks, all right? The folks who are driving the bus. All right, on the top right, again, we like this balanced scorecard framework. It gives us KPIs. We embed supply chain risk areas. And then we also talk about strategic, tactical, and operational risks as well. So we like the framework because it's a good cascading effect where you start with the 4 basic questions, you go through questions of discovery, and then you move down that cascade throughout the organization in terms of identifying areas of risk, then types of risk, and then KPIs, which there are a plethora, both performance KPIs and supply chain risk KPIs. So with that, this leads us, those are the 3 phases of our dimensions, if you will, of our resilient enterprise. This leads us to a new concept that we're sharing with you, and that is trust. We think it's the new catalyst for our 3-dimensional resilient enterprises, and a couple of quick thoughts from others on trust. One from Stephen Covey. What does he say? Trust always affects 2 measurable outcomes: speed and cost. When trust goes down and is reduced in a relationship, in a team, a company, an industry, with a customer, speed of things that happen decrease with it, and everything takes longer, and costs increase. So speed and costs. Another one, Peter Senge, uh, who is the father of systems thinking. He's more or less says system thinking is a framework for seeing inner relationships rather than just discrete things, for seeing patterns rather than static snapshots. More or less the big picture. You got to think about the big picture. And then finally, good friend of mine, I am a theory of constraints certified Jonah, Ellie Goldratt, the father of TOC and the book The Gold. He more or less has always said our fear of complex systems drives us to dissect the complex system into what? Subsystems. That leads to diverting management attention to chase local optima. So we're talking about the big picture. All right. And in terms of the big picture, we want to share with you something brand new. You are the first to hear about something new on the horizon from the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium, and that is the trust molecule. And we like to talk about it in terms of the chemical slant. All right. To us, it's the catalyst to drive supply chain transparency and resiliency. So you can see the three faces of three dimensions of our resilient enterprise, and we plopped in trust right in the middle. So in chemistry, we call this picture kind of a fluid dynamic situation. All right. So think about a water balloon. All right. When you have a water balloon, you squeeze that water balloon, what happens? It bulges all over the place, right, left, and so forth. Very tough. All right. Trust to us drives this fluid dynamic approach relative to supply chain performance improvement and risk management. So we'll be working on this concept in the next 12 months on a research project, culminating in what we think is an online framework that'll provide everyone an as is status of the trust relationship in your supply chain and a path forward as well. So we're very excited about the trust molecule. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. By the way, Greg, we do have a question in the chat. If you want to take a first stab at it, organizations that are pretty reactionary, but have response plans ready to activate for internal or external events, where would they fall or fail?
Where would they fall? Yeah. All right. And
Where would they
it's
fall?
it's a good question. Try to answer it right now. Most organizations, we've been in this business for 15 years. Most organizations are reactionary. It's
Yeah.
tough to get them to become proactive because we in our human DNA, folks, we are reactionary. All right. Our governments are reactionary. We are reactionary, and therefore it's very difficult to turn a company into being proactive and reactive at the same time. Proactive means to us that you are better prepared than most. You've done your scenario plans and you have risk mitigation. And then there's the other side of it, being responsive. You can have great plans, but execute the mitigation plan very poorly. So we think you got to do both. You got to be good at preparing for and then responding to a risk event. Where do the reactionary folks fall? If you're talking in terms of the 5-stage model, I would probably say they're in maybe stage 3. All right. They've gone through, they might have done a bit of digital modeling, but a lot of companies are still the exemplars, folks. There's about 400 exemplar companies who do everything that you're learning about today. They're out there. They do both pretty well. They're very proactive because they look at opportunity. They look at risk as an opportunity, not just a negative aspect. They turn it into opportunity, and then they're normally much better prepared for and better responsive to a risk event. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, and I'll just build on everything Greg said. And you see on stage 4, it gets into predictive, which means you're no longer relying daily on reactionary metrics, lagging indicators, and really switching the mindset from lagging indicators, like how many units you made is a lagging indicator. The time it takes you to make every unit and is getting closer to a leading indicator. So you may have the best intentions, but if you're running your company on lagging indicators and reviewing what you did last shift, and you're not putting in predictive into your daily predicting metrics and so forth into your daily plans, and looking at the variance to plan and what's the difference between what you should be doing and what you're and analyzing that on every shift, every person in the day. Those are the companies that are able to scale the wall. But very often just putting risk mitigation plans in and using them on lagging indicators, or when this happens, you're still reactionary. So that's the transfer of mindset that needs to occur, aligned to what Greg shared with you. So we'll move on to the alignment of the assessments, the tiers 2 and 3 of our supply chain management assessment to drive that stable growth that we're talking about in stage 3. And again, just reviewing back this model, we went through the 5 stages, but here the supply chain management readiness assessment, Greg talked about the ring of fire, which is aligns to about stage 1 to 2 in the maturity model of Gartner. Apprentice and mainstream are somewhere in that stage 2 to 3. And then the exemplars are at the top of stage 3 is how we've laid it out. In the aligning the supply chain management readiness assessment to the Gartner model. Then when you put on top of that, how you get there. So tier 1, we have the tier 1 free assessment to find out where you are, what stage you are. So 20, 30 minutes with you and your team to complete the assessment. We can do group assessments across your company to gain that alignment between finance, operations, supply chain, logistics across all your organization, and customer service. This to really understand where you're at. Are you ring of fire, apprentice, mainstream, or exemplar? That's the tier 2 assessment. Tier 3 is we're looking at industry benchmarking, which we'll cover in a few minutes, and we'll also cover from a strategy planning perspective how your supply chain fits into that, and then we put out that program. So that's to help you along, especially in those early stages. It's pretty critical to egg you along through those stages to move you at least to stage 3 and into 4. We feel that the supply chain management or the supply chain risk and resiliency assessment really helps you from the visibility and predictability stage that we just discussed just a few minutes ago, help you address the wall that actually happens at stage 3 for all companies. And so turning value equaling profit. And then the rest of the supply chain risk and resiliency maturity model, resiliency and sustainability, will help you achieve those stage 5, like we have helped many of those exemplar companies achieve that by adopting the supply chain risk and resiliency. The one thing we'll say is a caveat: if you're at stage 1 and you're trying to implement supply chain risk and resiliency, your organization won't probably have anything to do with it. So crawl, walk, run. Understand your supply chain before you get to supply chain risk and resiliency. Just a big takeaway here on this slide. So again, it looks like we had a few enters in the chat on the different stages, and it looks like we had some stage 2 and 3. So thank you for entering that into the chat. And if you have any questions about how to manage yourself from stage 2 to stage 3 and so forth, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to help. With that, I will try to move to the next slide where we want to line these things up. So that's the Gartner maturity model is kind of torturous. It's kind of goes around zigzag. So we put it in a linear fashion. So how do you move? What is the roadmap to exemplarship? So we have the 5 stages for Gartner. We laid them out linear from stage 1 to stage 5 on the top, and then what we've done is laid out the supply chain readiness maturity assessment and how those tools help you get to the point of stage 3 and addressing the wall. And we really feel like supply chain risk and resiliency assessment, when you're at the wall, that the principles in supply chain risk and resiliency that we teach really will help you clear that wall, that impervious wall that many companies encounter. And as I often see companies do, is they do the 1, 2, 3 step. And what I mean by that is they'll move from stage 1 to 2 to 3, and then they won't be able to achieve that high growth rate that we talked about before. The board fires everybody, the company goes into disarray, and they go back to stage 1. Eventually, a new CEO comes in, they move them to stage 3, but they get stuck, they can't move because it's a different mindset, completely different mindset to move from stage 3 to 4 than to move from stage 1 through 3. Again, you move from the inside out world to the outside in world. Not easy. So it takes a special CEO to be able to flip the switch and say, we're going to move from inside out to outside in. And so that's a little bit on the maturity models. Now, what we want to cover is our tier 3 offering for the supply chain management readiness assessment, which gets into quartiles. And this is benchmarking you relative to your competition or your adjacent suppliers or customers, suppliers in your network. So from an industry perspective, so where do you rank in your supply chain performance? So if you have a supplier and they're less or more mature than you are, that's going to help or hurt you in operating your company. So what you want is your whole entire supply chain to be at least as good as you or better than you in order for you to improve your performance even better when you're going upstream and downstream. So how do you compare yourself? So again, what we've laid out is the concept of industry benchmark, which is pretty standard, but you break up all the performance of all the different folks in your industry, and you break them up into 4 groups. And the first 25%, second 25%, and so forth. And those are identified as the lower quartile, P25, you see down here, the P50, the median, or P75. So here you have the laggards, the average, followers, and leaders, as we've called them here. And you also see in this scale up here. So the way that works is, again, the leaders are the highest performance in the highest 25% of all the data that has been collected in that industry, and the followers are 25 to 50%, and so forth. So that's the layout of the industry benchmark for your industry. And we have, of course, hundreds of assessments, as Greg mentioned, 10 years of tracking this, a lot of experience. So that's what is one of the things that you get out of performing a group offering of the tier 3 offering for the supply chain management readiness assessment. And so the question is, where's your company? Are you at the bottom or the top? And so it's not just where you are overall, but where are you relative to your nearest competitor, of course. So with that, we show the best in class performance here. This is over all data between 0 and 10, where again, 10 is the ring of fire. The lower the number, the better you are, as Greg mentioned. But let's just say the overall is 4.9 in the mainstream. And you can see aerospace industry is plotted out, electronics, petrochemicals, a little bit worse, their distribution, and heavy is just a little bit slightly worse than them with a higher spread. So this is, again, there's no right or wrong, but the question is, where are you? And Greg will show you for the case study where the case study company is on the industry benchmark. So that's one of the deliverables, again, for that tier 3 supply chain management readiness benchmark offering. So let's take a deep breath and say, okay, if we want to move from stage 3 to 4, what do we need to do? What are some of the big things? Again, number 1 is break down those silos of decision making. Again, you're not going to be looking at it from end to end, from supplier to customer. So you're no longer looking at value streams on a product line. You're looking at it across your business. The second is you have to have everything standardized, and you have to have governance across all of your all of your processes enterprise, and you have to have enterprise-wide supply chain standardized policies and have consistent workflows. Third is technology. Technology does play a big role here, especially moving from 3 to 4. It's very hard to do that without good data, believable data, and having a single moment of truth, so to speak, is absolutely key. You're moving to predictive analytics, and you're moving away from lagging indicators to proactive leading indicators. You're going to have enterprise information management, and you're going to be having that run your company. Then with that, of course, you have that ensure that data consistency, it's believable. You have real-time dashboards, not dashboards that are updated weekly, and you're making decisions weekly on things that need to be made in real time. So you're getting closer to real-time decision making, all possible in today's AI world. And we have many providers that can support that. And then overcome cultural resistance. Of course, culture is something that should never be taken lightly. You have to bring everybody along so that folks feel included, and you have the agility to deal with these things, and everybody has a stake at the table, right? They have something to go on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Yep, you bet. Coming at you. We've shared a lot of data with you so far. We wanted to kind of take a pause and show you a real world case study of some of the tools and techniques we've just explained to you. So what we have here is we have an actual chemical company went through the assessment. This is their assessment results. You can see their chart on the left-hand side. You can see the black line, which represents their as is state in terms of supply chain process maturity. Up on the top right, we categorize and we calculate, who they are and where they are, and they came in at 4.2 out of 10, and that in our category is an emerging leader out of leaders, mainstream, apprentice, and ring of fire. So essentially, they're pretty good at supply chain process maturity. Then what we also do for them is we calculate their strategic, tactical, and operational focus, and we identify those 3 areas, and then we look for the strengths. And in this case, their strength seems to be in the tactical side, which are the red elements. They're much stronger on the tactical side than they are strategic and or operational. And so we go through that net analysis. Remember, the lower the number you see, the stronger the process tenet is, meaning their strength or their weakness. All right. And then essentially, what we do is we advocate leverage your strengths and improve your weaknesses. And what we do is you can see the operational tenets essentially are red in the on the right-hand side, and they are, I'll say, the biggest area and opportunity for improvement. So we categorize, then we calculate their strengths and their weaknesses. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? And that helps us just by looking at the chart. It gives us a sense of direction in terms of the potential opportunity for improvement. So we wanted to show you the tier 1, which you have available to you. That is free. Next, we'll get into the industry benchmarking, as Jim mentioned. Jim explained our benchmarking process to you, which is available within the SCM assessment tool. It is fee for service. We have over 700 companies at the moment in our upgraded tool. We have had almost 3,000 companies in a 10-year period fill in the survey over time. And we just wanted to give you a sense of this particular chemical company. You can see on the left-hand side, the y-axis, Jim explained our categories. There is the average, the total population of all of the industries. That's 4.9, goes across horizontally. Then you can see the aerospace and electronics. They're a little bit above the total population average. They're much more mature than most. This particular petrochemical company is a little less mature than the average, but still very good in its class. And then we also posed a heavy industry. So you get a sense of where the industries are in total, in aggregate total from our database. And the chemicals on average, what we've seen, because we go across all industries, on average, they're a bit less mature in their supply chain processes than, let's say, aerospace and electronics. And we can understand why. But this is a picture image for the company relative to where they are in their industry. And this normally, when we benchmark companies within their industry, this normally gets a lot of executive attention. All right, because we're benchmarking them against their nearest competitors in their industry. So again, we have more opportunities to take a look at and slice and dice in this tool. The next one is what we call tier three. That's where we talk about prioritization. You looked at tier one, which gives you a snapshot. Then we go into strategic, tactical, and operational strengths and weaknesses. And now we ask a few more questions when we get engaged with the client. And that is, you can see the 13 tenets, but we ask different questions. Of the 13 tenets, which of these tenets are more important to you? And how satisfied are you in terms of the performance of those tenants, or vice versa, how dissatisfied are you relative to each other's 13 tenants performance? But it's not easy. The charts are a little bit tricky, but the net is we take the two outcomes of those questions of discovery, and essentially it gives us a prioritization improvement game plan. And over on the left, for this company, we plopped out 5. Information systems can be improved. The S&OP process, sales and operations planning, adaptive manufacturing can be improved, risk mitigation planning, and their agility. So we help them get aligned in terms of getting the biggest bang for the buck when you improve some of these supply chain processes. And so the net for this particular client, what comes out of the roadmap game plan are persona action plans for this chemical arena. And the action plan looks like this. To recap, on the top left, this company is an emerging leader from a best-in-class process maturity point of view. Their strength is in tactical processes, and they are a leader in their organization. The action plan basically came out and said you should be focusing more on supply chain agility and resiliency, beef that up, develop new metrics of success to support supply chain risk to get ready. You should be attempting to reduce your rigidity in your governance structure. They were kind of rigid in terms of structure to support better agility. And finally, you should be attempting to realize your risk appetites relative to your vast product portfolio. They have a lot of products that they produce and service. So we just wanted to share with you what the chemical VP said. The readiness is a critical success factor in your industry, you bet. Before the assessment, we all felt we had a fairly robust supply chain approach. The tool was a terrific wake-up call for our supply chain team. So we like to hear that approach or that response, and they were pretty pleased, and they've been moving forward ever since. So with that, we'll move into our last section for you, and that is the profit pathway, turning maturity into revenue engine. I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. Just a quick overview on some of the areas when you're moving from stage 3 to 4 that you'll see according to Gartner, Chainalytics, and the Hackett Group. From moving stage 3 to 4, you'll definitely see higher margins. Again, you're focusing more on margin than you are on cost out, and that is reflected on EBITDA, where you're increasing net pricing and cost to serve, and which will then drive higher inventory turns, meaning you're ensuring you have the right product mix and the right inventory to serve your customers, and you're not creating slob in your inventory stores because you have a better visibility on what moves, what doesn't move, and you've done your SKU rationalization, and that turns into dividends. It's hard to do SKU rationalization in some of these basic tools when you don't have a good understanding of the data in your warehouse and your performance. And overall, that 30 days, shorting your cycle time by 30 days for your cash conversion cycle will be very healthy on your balance sheet. So those are just some of the improvements that you can see from a financial perspective. With that, we'll just close it out with some helpful hints. Greg?
Yepper. Yep. Trying to talk to the machine. There you go. I'll take the top. Again, this is Gartner stage 3 and 4, 3 to 4 helpful hints. I'll take the top from a supply chain management point of view on the left, just kind of a recap. Continue to leverage your strengths and improve your weaknesses. Get into the system. Take a look at it. It will help you just by looking at the chart, prioritize some action items. Maybe you want to go through tier 2 and tier 3 in terms of getting a sense of how important and how satisfied or dissatisfied you are with the performance of the 13 tenets, and maybe even benchmark your supply chain process against your peers. If you'd like to do that, just give us a ping. Over on the right-hand side, from a risk and resiliency point of view, again, we advocate you got to start somewhere. Start with the maturity model. It's free. Take a look at it, answer the questions, be truthful. It's not what you would like to be, it's where you are today. Continue the dialogue, maybe within your team, to how do we identify internal and external risks. You can do that without a tool, and start to talk about building maybe a risk management framework for your organization. Maybe inject over time the use of risk alert systems, folks. They're out there. They're cloud-based. They're not $1 million. There are a lot of external risks that can impact your global supply chain. We advocate that sooner or later you start talking about maybe exercising some external risk alert systems that will give you impacts on yours, that will provide impacts potentially on your supply chain ecosystem. With that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And we'll just review some of the things that happen in the balanced scorecard when you're moving from stage 3 to 4. From a finance perspective, we brought it up a couple times. You're going to be using SKU rationalization and product family margin rationalization, margin per SKU. You're going to know every margin per SKU versus just a pure cost out and a top line not talking to each other. So that's a big mindset change in moving from stage 3 to 4. Another one is your people. What you find is you start valuing your people more because you're able to show their value on the P&L. And from an internal process perspective, you're moving at stage 3 to stability. You finally got a stable ecosystem across your enterprise, and now you're looking to optimize that. So that's what you'll be focusing on from a process perspective. Again, the customer, you're working from profitable customers to valued customers to growing customer value in your supply chain and growing revenue. So you're not just looking pure at how much money I'm making off of each customer, but you're valuing customers and you're developing win-wins. And then finally, on the supplier side, just like on the customer side, you're working on those centralized relationships with suppliers, and you're even creating win-win-win-wins. We called it 3 wins when you're going up and down the supply chain. That's really exciting and a lot of fun when you get to stage 4. So that's what you could be looking forward to in stage 4. From a Gartner maturity model alignment perspective, again, you're going to clear the wall. You're going to be the first organization to ever clear the wall in the company, and the whole culture of the organization will change. There'll be more energy in the workplace. You'll leverage your real-time strategy from an S&OP perspective to gain that return on scaling, your maturity, and sustainable, profitable returns, distancing yourself from your competitors. So this is very fun when you move from stage 3 to 4. When you clear the wall, you'll know it. All of a sudden, you'll look behind and your competitors are no longer around. And it's a lot of fun when you get to that stage. It's a lot of work, but it is tremendous fun when you get there. With that, we'll close out the webinar. Hopefully you found this informative. We and our deliverables, we met our deliverables. If you have any questions further, please feel free to call us. I think I sent out a email this morning. If you have any questions, please let us know. We had some nice comments and one I'm trying to read right now while I'm talking. You like the balanced scorecard approach and the addition of trust. Yeah, thank you. Great comment, Chris. Thank you for your comment. And with that, our next webinar will be April 17th, not too far away. So we hope to see you there when we move from stage 4 to 5, which is the most exciting stages. But again, there's only a few companies that have reached there. We'll be more than happy to take any questions on any of the stages to get there. With that, Greg, you want to close us out?
You bet. We hope we provided you with some few helpful hints regarding our perspective on the resilient enterprise, especially relating to our trust molecule, which is brand new. It is a journey. Remember that it's a journey, not a point solution. So feel free to start your journey by exercising our free online supply chain readiness assessment tool and get an as-is status of your supply chain process maturity. Our next webinar, as Jim mentioned, will cover moving from Gartner stage 4 to 5, and we hope to see you there. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Greg. And just to close it out, the picture we have here, just to explain it, where, you know, whether you're stage 1 down here or you're stage 2, 3, or 4, the city is there. The city of gold is there over the rainbow, so to speak. So don't give up. It is a journey, as Greg said, but you need to understand where you're at and who's in front of you and how to navigate up the mountain to get to the golden city. And we're here to help and with you to build your personalized roadmap for your company, your culture. Thanks so much and have a great day.